This is Audible.
Eisenhorn, Herticus, by Dan Abnett. Read by Toby Longworth. By order of His Most Holy Majesty the God Emperor of Terra. Sequestered inquisitorial dossiers. Authorized persons only. Case file 44241F-JL3-KBU. Please enter your authority code. Validating. Thank you, Inquisitor. You may proceed. To Gregor Eisenhorn, a communique. Carried by Guild Astropathica Scarus via Memewave 45-A.639 triple intra. Path detail. Origin Thracian Primaris Helicon sub 81281. Origin date 142.386.M41. Relayed Divergent M-12/Ostal7. Received Jura Ophidian sub 52981. Reception date 144.386.M41. Transcript carried and logged as per header. Redundant copy filed buffer 4362, key 11. Author Lord Inquisitor Phlebas Alessandro Raucan. Master of the Ordo Xenos Helicon. Inquisition High Council Officio. Scarus Sector.
My dear Gregor, in the name of the God Emperor and of the Holy Inquisition, greetings. I trust the elders of Jura have welcomed you in a manner befitting your status. Hierarch Onopel has been charged by my officio to ensure that you are provided with all requirements for the long task ahead. May I take this opportunity to express my gratitude to you again for agreeing to conduct this examination in my stead. My health, so it would appear to everyone but me, is still a matter for concern. My physician clucks over me night and day. They have changed my blood a number of times and talk of further surgery, but it is all for naught. I am healthy and sound, and would be on the road to recovery but for their coddling. Indeed, I would be on the road to Jura too, but for that. Yet it seems a quack from the Officio Medicae has authority over even one such as I. The work I have done to bring the heretics of Jura to trial must be finished in my absence, and I can think of no surer hand than yours to steer the business. I write to you for two reasons, apart, that is, for expressing my thanks. Despite my efforts, Sakharov Lord Herticus has insisted on sending two of his own delegates to the examination, Koth and Menderev. You know them both. I'm sorry, Gregor, but you must tolerate them. They are a burden I would have spared you from. Secondly, I am forced to saddle you with Inquisitor Bastian Vervuk. He was an interrogator under Lord Ozma, and had come to my staff to finish his preparation. I had promised him a hand in the examination, primarily because of his good offices in securing the central prosecutions. Please accommodate him in your council for my sake. He is a good man, young and untried, but capable, though he reeks of the Puritan. Didn't we all at that age? He will arrive with you on the 151st. Make him as welcome as you can. I know you hate to incorporate unknowns into your camp, but I ask this as a personal favor. Ozma will make things very difficult for me if I retard his pupil's progress at this late stage. I wish you speed, wisdom, and success in the closure of this inspection. Sealed and notarized by Astropathicae Clerk, this 142nd day of 386.M41. The Emperor protects. Raucan. Message ends. To Gregor Eisenhorn, a communique, carried by Guild Astropathica Scarus via Meme Loop Repeat 45-3.5611 secure. Path detail. Origin Thracian Primaris Helicon sub 81281. Origin date 142.386.M41. Relayed Loop Navigatus 351-Echo Gurnail Beacon. Received Jura Ophidian sub 52981. Reception date 144.386.M41.
M41. Transcript carried and logged as per header. Redundant copy filed buffer 7002, key 34. Author Inquisitor Bastian Vervug, Ordo Xenos, Inquisition High Council Officio, Scarus Sector, Scarus Major. Salutations, sir. In the name of the God Emperor, hallowed be his eternal vigil, and by the high lords of terror, I commend myself to your eminence, and trust that this communique finds your eminence in good health. Great was my excitement when my Lord Rawkin informed me that I was to take a part, at his side, in the formal examination of the vile and abominated heretics of Jura. At once I threw myself into the cataloguing of advanced discovery, and assisted in the compilation of the evidentiary archive that would support the particulars of the examination. You may then imagine my terrible disappointment when my lord's sudden and lamentable illness seemed to cast the very occurrence of that divine work into doubt. Now, this very hour, my lord has informed me that you are to oversee the matter as his proxy, and that you have agreed to find a place for me at your side. I cannot contain my exhilaration. The chance to work at close hand with one such as you. I have studied your holy work with awe since my earliest days in the preparatory scholams. You are an object lesson in devotion and puritanical duty, an example to us all. I look forward with great eagerness to discussing matters of contra-heretical law with you, and perhaps hearing first-hand a few scraps of your dazzling insight. It is my most fervent ambition to pursue the rank of Inquisitor in the Ordo Herticus, and I am sure I would be better armed for such duty if I had the benefit of learning from your own first-hand accounts of such infamous beings as the dread Quixos. You will find me a devoted and hard-working colleague. I count the days until we can begin this sacred work together. Hallowed be the Golden Throne. Your servant, Bastian Vervug. Message ends. To Lord Rawkin, a communique, carried by Guild Astropathica Ophidia via meme wave 3Q1-C.122, double intra. Path detail. Origin, Jura, Ophidian sub 52981. Origin date, 144.386.M41. Relayed, Divergent B-3/loop, Gurnail Beacon. Received, Thracian Primaris, Helican sub 81281. Reception date, 149.386.M41. Transcript carried and logged as per header. Redundant copy deleted from buffer. Author, Herticus Eisenhorn, Inquisitor. Re Bastian Vervug. My lord, what fetid corner of the Imperium breeds these fawning idiots? Now you really owe me. G.E. Message ends. Chapter 1. The Case of Udwin Prid. Small talk with Vervug. Something like vengeance. When the time came, Fade Thuring was damn near impossible to stop. I blame myself for that. I had let him run on for too long. For the best part of 8 decades he had escaped my attentions, and in that time he had grown immeasurably from the minor warp dabbler I had once let slip away. My mistake. But I wasn't the one to pay. On the 160th day of 386.M41, a nobleman in his late 160s appeared at the examination hearings held in the Imperial Minster of Erial, the legislative capital of the Uvig in the southwest of Jura's 3rd largest landmass. He was a landowner, widowed young, and he had built his fortune in post-liberation Jura society on a successful agri-combine venture and the inherited wealth of his late wife. In 376, as a mature, successful, and highly eligible newcomer amongst the gentry of the Uvig, a prosperous region of verdant farmland, he had made a socially advancing second marriage. His new bride was Beatrice, 30 years his junior, the eldest daughter of the venerable House Samarg. The Samarg family's ancient wealth was at that time seeping away, as the efficient land-use policies of administratum-sponsored combines slowly took control of the Uvig's pastoral economy. The nobleman's name was Udwin Prid, and he had been summoned by the hierarch of the See of Erial to answer charges of recidivism, warpcraft, and, above all, heresy. Facing him across the marble floor of the minster was a dignified inquisitorial body of the most august quality. Inquisitor Escain Koth, an Amalathian, born and bred on Thracian Primaris, one day to be known as the Dove of Avignon. Inquisitor Laszlo Menderev, a native of lowland Sancor, Menderev the Grievous, as he would become. An Istvanian with a cold appreciation of warp crime and poor body hygiene. Inquisitor Paul Rassi, son of the Kilwaddy Steppes, a sound, elderly, even-handed servant of order. The novice Inquisitor Bastian Vervuk. And myself, Gregor Eisenhorn, Inquisitor and presiding examiner. Prid was the first of 260 individuals identified by Lord Rawkin's work as possible heretics to be weighed by this formal court of examination. He looked nervous but dignified as he faced us, toying with his lace collar. He had hired a partner called Fenn of Clintsey to speak on his behalf. It was the third day of the hearings. As the partner droned on, describing Prid in terms that would have made a saint blush for want of virtue, I thumbed half-heartedly through the catalogue of pending cases and sighed at the scale of the work to come. The catalogue, we all had a copy, was thicker than my wrist. This was the third day already, and still we had not progressed further than the preamble of the first case. The opening rites had taken a full day, and the legal recognition of the authority of the Ordos Helican here on Jura, together with other petty matters of law, yet another. I wondered, may the God Emperor forgive my lack of charity, if Lord Rawkin's illness was genuine, or just a handy excuse to avoid this tedium. Outside it was a balmy summer day. Wealthy citizens of Erial were boating on the ornamental lakes, lunching in the hillside trattorias of the Uvige, conducting lucrative business in the caffeine houses of the city's commercia. In the echoing, cool vault of the minster there was nothing but the whining voice of Fenn of Clintsey. Golden sunlight shafted in through the clerestory windows and bathed the stalls of the audience gallery. That area was half empty. A few dignitaries, clerks, local hierarchs and archivists of the Planetary Chronicle. They looked drowsy to me, and I knew their account of these proceedings would be at odds with the official log recorded by the picked servitors. Hierarch Onapel himself was already dozing. The fat idiot. If his grip on the spiritual fibre of his flock had been tighter, these hearings might not have been necessary. I saw my ancient savant, Uber Amos, apparently listening intently, though I knew his mind was far away. I saw Elizabeth Bequin, my dear friend and colleague, reading a copy of the court briefing. She looked stately and prim in her long dark gown and half veil. As she pretended to turn the pages, I glimpsed the data slate concealed inside its cover. Another volume of poetry, no doubt. The glimpse made me chuckle, and I hastened to stifle the sound.
"My lord, is there a problem?"
the pardoner asked, breaking off in mid-flow. I waved a hand. "None. Please continue, sir, and hasten to your summary, perhaps." The minster at Erial was only a few decades old, rebuilt from war rubble in a triumphant high Gothic style. As little as half a century before, this entire subsector, the Ophidian subsector, had been in the embrace of the arch-enemy. In fact, it had been my honour to witness the embarkation of the great imperial task force that had liberated it. That had been on Gudrun, the former capital world of the Helican subsector, 150 years previously. Sometimes I felt very old. I had lived, by that time, for 188 years, so I was in early middle age by the standards of privileged imperial society. Careful augmetic work and juvenate conditioning had retarded the natural deteriorations of my body and mind, and more significant artifice had repaired wounds and damage my career had cost me. I was robust, healthy, and vigorous, but sometimes the sheer profusion of my memories reminded me how long I had been alive. Of course, I was but a youth compared to Amos. Sitting there, in a gilt lifter throne at the centre of the high table, dressed in the robes and regalia of a Lord Chief Examiner, I reflected that I had perhaps been too hard on that duffer Onapel. Any reconquered territory, taken back from the taint of the warp, would perforce be plagued by heresy for some time, as imperial law reinstated itself. Indeed, ordos dedicated to the Ophidian subsector had yet to be founded, so jurisdiction lay with the neighbouring Officio Helican. An examination such as this was timely. 50 years of freedom, and it was right for the Inquisition to move in and inspect the fabric of the new society. This was necessary tedium, I tried to remind myself, and Rawkin had been correct in calling for it. The Ophidian subsector, thriving in its recovery, needed the Inquisition to check on its spiritual health, just as this rebuilt Minster needed stonemasons to keep an eye on its integrity as it settled. "My Lord Inquisitor," Vervug whispered to me. I looked up and realized Fenn the Pardoner had finished at last. "Your duty is noted, Pardoner. You may retire," I said, scribing a mark on my slate. He bowed.
"I trust the accused has paid you in advance for your time," said Inquisitor Koth archly. "His assets may be sequestered ere long."
"I have been paid for my statement, sir,"
confirmed Fenn. "Generously, it seems," I observed. "Was it by the word?" My fellow Inquisitors chuckled, except Vervug, who barked out an overloud whinny as if I had just made the finest jest this side of the Golden Throne. By the throne, he was a sycophantic weasel. If ever a windpipe cried out for a brisk half-hitch, his was it. At least his snorting had woken Onopel up. The hierarch roused with a start and growled, "Hear, hear," with a foe-knowing nod of his many-chinned head, as if he had been listening intently all along. Then he went bright red and pretended to look for something under his pew. "If there are no further comments from the Ministorum," I said dryly, "perhaps we can move on. Inquisitor Mendereff?" "Thank you, Lord Chief Examiner," said Mendereff politely, rising to his feet. The Pardoner had scurried away, leaving Prid alone in the open expanse of the wide floor. Prid was in chains, but his fine garb with its lace trim seemed to discomfort him more than the shackles. Mendereff walked around the high table to face him, turning the pages of a manuscript slowly. He began his cross-examination. Laszlo Mendereff was a slender man, a century old. His thin brown hair was lacquered up over his skull in a hard widow's peak, and his face was sallow and taut-skinned. He wore a long, plain velvet robe of Selpic blue, with his rosette of office and the symbol of the Order Herticus pinned at his breast. He had a chilling manner that I admired, though I cared not at all for the man's radical philosophy. He was also the most articulate interrogator in Sakharov's officio. His long-fingered, agile hands found a place in the manuscript and stopped there.
"Adwin Prid," he said.
"Sir?" Prid answered.
"On the 42nd day of 380.M41, you called upon the house of an unlicensed practitioner of apothecary in Clud, and purchased 2 phials of umbilical blood, a hank of hair from the head of an executed murderer, and a fertility doll carved from a human finger bone."
"I did not, sir."
"Oh," said Mendereff amiably. "Then I am mistaken."
He turned back and nodded to me.
"It appears we are done here, Lord Examiner," he said.
He paused just long enough for Prid to sag with relief, then wheeled round again. Glory, but his technique was superb.
"You're a liar," he said.
Prid recoiled, suddenly alert once more.
"Sir? The apothecary was executed for her practices by the Arial Arbites in the winter of 382. She kept annotated records of her dealings, which, I presume, she foolishly thought might serve as some kind of bargaining tool in the event of her apprehension. Your name is there. The matter of your purchases is there. Would you like to see it?"
"It is a fabrication, sir."
"A fabrication?
Mendereff paced slowly around the defendant. Prid tried to keep his eyes on him, but didn't dare turn from his spot. Once Mendereff was behind him, Prid started to shake.
"You've never been to Clud?"
"I go there sometimes, sir."
"Sometimes?"
"Once, maybe twice every year."
"For what purpose?"
"There is a feed merchant in Clud who—"
"Yes, there is. Arn Wyss. We have spoken with him. Though he admits to knowing you and doing business with you. He says he never saw you at all in 380, or the year after. He has no receipt of purchase for you in his ledger."
"He is mistaken, sir."
"Is he? Or are you?"
"Sir?"
"Prid, your Pardoner has already taken up too much of the day extolling and magnifying your multiple virtues. Do not waste any more of our time. We know you visited the apothecary. We know what you purchased. Make us like you more by collaborating with this line of questioning."
Prid shuddered. In a small voice he said, "I did make those purchases, sir. Yes."
"Louder! For the court, please. I see amber lights winking on the Vox recorders. They're not picking up your voice. The lights have to glow green, you see. Like they are now, hearing me. Green means they hear you."
"Sir, I did make those purchases." Menderev nodded and looked back at his manuscript.
2 phials of umbilical blood, a hank of hair from the head of an executed murderer, and fertility doll carved from a human finger bone. Are those the purchases you mean?"
"Yes, sir."
"Green lights, Prid. Green lights."
"Yes, sir." Menderev closed the manuscript and stalked round in front of Prid again.
"Would you like to explain why?"
Prid looked at him and swallowed hard. "For the stock."
"The stock?"
"My breeding stock of cattle, sir."
"Your cattle asked you to make these purchases?"
Koth and Vervuk laughed. No, sir. I had purchased 50 head of breeding stock from a farm in the South Uvige 2 years before. Corsican Red Flank. Do you know the breed, sir?" Menderev looked back at us, playing to the gallery with raised eyebrows.
"I am not on first-name terms with cattle, Prid."
"They're good stock, the best. Certificated by the Administratum Officio Agricultae. I was hoping to breed from them and establish a commercial herd for my combine."
"I see. And?"
"They sickened over winter. None would carry to term. The things they whelped were stillborn. Such things. I had to burn them. I asked the Ministorum for a blessing, but they refused. Said it was a failing in my stockmanship. I was desperate. I had sunk a lot of capital into the herd, sir. Then this apothecary told me."
"Told you what?"
"That it was the warp. Said the warp was in the feed and the land, the very meadows. She said I could cure the trouble if I followed her guidance."
"She suggested you used rural warpcraft to mend your ailing cattle."
"She did."
"And you thought that was a good idea?"
"As I said, I was desperate, sir."
"I know you were. But it wasn't for the cattle, was it? Your wife had asked you to make the purchases, hadn't she?"
"No, sir."
"Yes, sir. Your wife, of the Samag bloodline, desperate to restore power and vigor to its ailing fortunes."
"Yes."
"Green light, Prid."
"Yes." From the documentation and my preparation, I already knew that House Samag was the biggest game we were after on Dura. To his credit, Vervuk had suggested we begin with Prid, a minor player, no more than an accomplice, really, and use him as a lever to open up the noble family. On the basis of his testimony, the corruption of the ancient house would be easy to force out into the open. Menderev continued his questioning for over an hour, and, to tell the truth, it made for captivating theatre. When the minster bell sounded nones, he cast a subtle glance at me to indicate there was no point pressing Prid further for the time being. A break, with opportunity for the defendant to pace and worry, would serve us well for the day's second session. "We will suspend the hearing for a brief term," I declared. "Bailiffs, conduct the accused to the cells. We will resume at the chime, an hour from now."